our class. We're so honored that you would spend time with us tonight in this class. Now, tonight we have a very thought-provoking question, but first, let me give you an invitation. Let me invite you to come join us in the Bible Study Challenge. Now, what is the Bible Study Challenge? The Bible Study Challenge is a simple and easy way for you to come to know, to understand, and remember the key events of the Bible. If you will just give me five brief classes a week, and give me 5 little minutes a day reciting the major keys, come March, you're going to know over 500 major events, characters, and stories of the Bible. That's the Bible Study Challenge. If you're new to the Bible Study Challenge, scroll down until you find one of our step-by-step instructions. It will explain the method. You can watch that video. It'll be probably 5-6 minutes long. And then you'll know how to do the Bible Study Challenge. Now, our question for tonight comes from it's a young lady that this question bothers her. And I understand why it bothers her. Let's look at the question, and then I'm going to eventually tell you some of her feelings. The question is this: why did Jesus select Judas? We're referring to Judas Iscariot. Why did Jesus select Judas to be one of the 12? You know that there was a lot of followers. There were a lot of disciples coming to Jesus. A lot of people being taught by Jesus. And he selected out of that bunch, out of that large number, he selected 12. 12. That 12 reminds us of the 12 tribes of Israel. You know, 12 is a special number in the Jewish mind. So why, if he's only going to pick 12, why did he pick Judas? Well, let's answer that question. Let's first turn to John chapter 6. John chapter 6, let's look at verse 64. Now, let me set this up. Jesus has been teaching. Now, the crowds have been coming, especially after the feeding of the 5,000. The crowds really started coming. And he's teaching, and the crowd can't accept the teaching. He's talking about eating his flesh, drinking his blood. The crowd is thinking physical. They're thinking, well, this man wants us to become cannibals. We're not going to do that. Of course, Jesus is not talking physical. Jesus is talking spiritual. Remember, we partake of his body when we take the bread. We take of his blood when we drink the cup, and the communion is symbolic. But they think it's physical, so a lot of the crowd started to go home, started to leave Jesus. Notice verse 64. But there are some of you, Jesus is speaking to them, there are some of you who do not believe. You're really not convinced. You do not believe. For Jesus knew from the beginning who those were who did not believe, and who it was who would betray him. You see, the betrayal of Judas did not come as a surprise to Jesus. He wasn't saying, oh, I never saw that coming. I'm so surprised. I'm shocked. Jesus knew exactly what Judas would end up doing. Drop down to verse 70. Jesus answered them, did I not choose you, the 12, and yet one of you is a devil? He spoke of Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, for he, one of the 12, was going to betray him. Jesus knew it. He was not surprised. It did not come to Jesus as a shock. Now, go with me over to John chapter 12. John chapter 12. Let me get the right page here. And go down to verse number 4. Now, Mary comes in, and she takes a pound of very expensive ointment made from pure nard. Now, this would be very expensive. And she anointed the feet of Jesus. Now, look at verse 4. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, he who was about to betray him, said, Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? Now, he didn't say this because he had a soft spot in his heart for the poor people. It wasn't that he wanted to help the poor people, because John explains. He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. And having charge of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. He was stealing from the money bag that the apostles had to pay for their expenses. Now, Judas, I believe, now here's my personal thought here. Judas, I believe, initially had good qualities. I don't believe Jesus would purposely select a man of low standards, a man of low morals. It would be like, for example, say a congregation putting in a new elder for the church, and that elder being a scoundrel, being a person that the whole community knew that he's just a bad guy. Can you picture that happening? Well, no, that wouldn't happen, would it? Because it would be a reflection on the church to put a man in as an elder of the church who did not meet the qualifications of an elder. Now, I believe if Jesus had selected Judas, and Judas initially was a scoundrel, I think that would have been a bad reflection on Jesus. Furthermore, did you notice who they selected, who the apostles had selected to take care of the money bag? They had selected Judas. Now keep in mind, they've got within their midst, within the 12, they've got a man who had a history of having to deal with money. We're talking about Matthew. Remember, Matthew, also known as Levi, Matthew was a former tax collector. He dealt with money all the time. They did not ask Matthew to be in charge of the money bag. They asked Judas to be in charge of the money bag. Now, what does that say to me? I think Judas on the outside, even to the apostles, looked good. I think there was good qualities initially in the heart of Judas. I don't think that Judas would ever have been selected if he had been a scoundrel from the start. So what happened? I think that passage we just read kind of helps us to understand what had happened. What had happened was money. Money had pulled him away. Money had pulled him away. You know, Judas probably was somewhat of an outsider. Of the 12 apostles, we think, we're not for sure, but we think that 11 of the 12 were from the Galilee. So they had that in common. And Judas was probably the only one from Judea. So he was a little different from the other 11. And I think Judas, for whatever reason, was pulled away by his desire for money. Look now at John 13. John chapter 13. Let's look at verse 16. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master. Now, he had just washed their feet. By the way, he washed the feet of Judas. Even knowing, he knew that Judas would betray him, he still washed his feet. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. I'm not speaking of all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but the scripture will be fulfilled. He who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. Now, circle that phrase. He who has ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. I'm telling you this now before it takes place, that when it does take place, you may believe that I am he. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever receives the one I send receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me. And after these things, Jesus was troubled in his spirit and testified, truly, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. The disciples looked at one another, uncertain of whom he spoke. They're not certain. You see, in the hearts of the 11, they were not aware of what was happening in the heart of Judas. I think Judas initially started out with good qualities. And I said, Jesus washed the feet of Judas as well as the other 11. And also, remember, Jesus gave that morsel of bread. Now, we know that John was leaning up against Jesus. Now, they're reclining. They're reclining on what we would call pillows. They're not sitting like, right now I'm sitting at my dining room table. They were not sitting in chairs. They were reclining on pillows. And John is reclining on him, kind of next to him. And Jesus is the host. And being the host, there's two honored seats at the dinner. There's the one to the right, John, and then the one to the left. Now, I can't say this for sure, but Jesus was close enough to give Judas a morsel of bread. To me, that says that Judas is to the left of the Savior. He gave Judas one of the honored seats, not Peter, not James, but Judas. You see, I think Jesus was doing a last-ditch effort for the heart of Judas. He washed his feet. He had him seated at the honored spot at the dinner, at the feast. And I think Jesus was giving him one last effort to win his heart back. Now, we know what happens. We know what happens. He listens to the devil. Notice Luke chapter 22, verse 3. Then Satan entered into Judas, called Iscariot, who was one of the number of the 12. He went away and conferred with the chief priests and officers, how he might betray him to them. And they were glad and agreed to give him money. Now, I think money was that pulled Judas away. Why did Jesus select Judas? I think Judas initially was like the other 11. He was interested in the message that Jesus was sharing. But I think Judas, in the 3 years that he was with Jesus, I think Judas was eventually led away by the devil through the pull of money. So that's my answer to that question. At this time, let me ask you to please do us a favor. Please click on share and share now. And when you do that, you're helping us so very much. Here at the 70 West Church of Christ, we have classes for you Monday through Saturday at 7 and 9. If it's 7 or 9 a.m. or p.m., it's time for a great class from the 70 West Church of Christ. We have not forgotten our young people. We love our teenagers. We have classes for teenagers on Friday and Saturday at 8 o'clock. Do you have questions for me? Bible Investigation is all about your questions and Bible answers. You've got questions? Please email me at preachermichaelcox@hotmail.com. That's preachermichaelcox@hotmail.com. Would you like to be involved in a free Bible correspondence course? Just email us at 70westbiblestudies@gmail.com. If you live in the continental U.S. and would like to receive for free the Heart to Heart, House to House publication, just send us your mailing address and we'll get you a free copy sent to you. Have you downloaded my free app? I'm talking about Truth.fm. It's free Christian programming at Truth.fm. At the 70 West Church of Christ, we have 3 worship services for you on Sunday. We have one at 7:45 for high-risk people. We have one at 10 o'clock and one at 6 o'clock. The 10 o'clock and 6 o'clock are live stream for your convenience. We also have a Wednesday Bible study in Devo that begins at 7. Once again, live streamed on Facebook and YouTube. Remember, you're always a guest at the 70 West Church of Christ. Now, as we close out, it is our hope, it is our wish, it is our prayer that each one of us will live for Jesus